So how many people think they know what universal design is? Just raise your hand, I guess. Okay. Not too many, I guess. So usually what people think of universal design, they think of something that's for accessibility, people with impairments. Because it means really design for everyone. And everyone is different, we know that. We have to honor their diversity. But the thing here is, how do we solve for that as designers for their everyday needs and what they're doing? And it's kind of political too, because for everyone, they want it for they want to customize that user interface for them, not for someone else, right? What works for you doesn't necessarily work for someone else. And in fact, when someone comes to me and says, what's the best mobile phone? And what do you recommend? And I never give them the answer because I can't answer that for them. I said, you have to ask yourself some questions. You know, what's the most frequent important tasks that you do, not me, because what's good for me isn't necessarily good for you. So there are different pain points that people have. They don't like about the user interfaces. That's very important in design. And one of the problems in accessibility or other things is we found out in doing all these focus groups, usability tests and studies, surveys, is separate is not equal. Because if I have this cell phone, and you'll see later about the pain points, I want to do everything on that cell phone. I don't want something else special or different. People want to be able to do everything from there. So that's what I mean by all for one, one for all. It's not the Three Musketeers. Okay, so typically people think of permanent impairments. That is, someone's blind, they can never see, they can't hear, and that's all the time, 7/24. But the truth is, we all experience impairments sometime in our lives, temporarily, situationally. So how many people go to the eye doctor and has drops in their eyes, and then they can't see or read close up? How many have had that experience? Okay, that's what it is to be low vision. You can't really focus on certain things close up. So that's a temporary thing because it goes away after a few hours. Or how many have used closed captioning on the TV? A few of you. Well, when do you want to use closed captioning? When someone else is sleeping, in a quiet environment, the library, or maybe in the gym. So it could be a matter of situation. It could be a matter of personal preference. I just like having closed captioning on, or while listening to music or something. Whatever it might be, it could be situational. It could be just, I like using it that way. So it's really for all users, not any particular just permanent impairment. So really what we find is a one-size-fits-all type of user interface really isn't what's there. It's having it adapt to you, the user. So where design starts, for me at least, and I think for most people who do design, is to understand what insights do I need? What are the customer pain points? What's the problems that I need to solve here? So, for example, what we did was look at the pain points, the customer issues from these different types of permanent impairments. So we went to the Shepherd Center down in Atlanta, Georgia, and they asked them, okay, what are the issues if you're blind or low vision or deaf or hard of hearing, things like that. And then we focused a lot on this particular thing, looking at blind and low vision users. So we tested a number of basic phones, smartphones, over the last few years. And many of these are well-known centers for the blind up in Massachusetts. And what does universal design really mean? It's multimodal. It's anytime, anywhere, any place. We'll be able to use any modality that you are in need to use for you, the person, or that particular situation, place, or time. So it's really anywhere. That's why it's very important for a mobile device, because you can go into many different situations that change things for you, and you may have to adjust that interface for that situation. And believe it or not, there's just all kinds of things. It could be a noisy bar environment, and you would want closed captioning on. So the hearing, you can have that. Vision, you know, when you're driving a car, you're not really, hopefully not looking at that screen. Texting and driving is, you know, illegal in most states. I'd say 48 out of 50, and it's pretty dangerous, right? So there, in that case, you're literally using the interface, driving it blind. So what do we end up doing? We have other alternatives such as voice input. You have a lot of things like Siri, Google Now, Cortana. So there's a lot of different personal agents that have evolved and have come to being with having a conversational type of interface. And then there's also touch. You'll see how difficult, I mean, who remembers their passwords? I mean, one of the biggest things that you have for any IT organization is resetting passwords, because people can't remember them, because we make them change it all the time. So, you know, these are things that you have to do. And think about biometric type of solutions. So again, universal design isn't just for the person, you know, who can't remember the passwords. It's many other things, okay? And you shouldn't want to just use fingerprints, but because how do you know they have digits? So in any case, you want multiple inputs and outputs. So how many people recognize this or ever even use this? Is it a teletype? Yes, it is, a TTY. It says right there. But in any case, have you used one?
I've heard of them, but I've never used one.
Never used one. So this is how people can communicate with each other who are deaf. In fact, it's very important for E911 calls. And believe it or not, you can actually plug this into your cell phone and use it by law. But the thing is, what's the problem? How big do you think that is?
It's pretty big.
It's pretty big? Is it bigger than what you have here? What is this?
It's a tablet.
It's a tablet. Is it bigger than that? Yes. So what do you think? Do you think someone's going to be walking around with this thing in order to use it? No. So you have this separate interface, totally separate interface. It's really not practical. It's not usable. And in fact, that's what I mean by separate but not equal. So how we get those insights, those pain points, we say to ourselves, okay, what does the user say? Well, I don't use the TTY because it's too slow. It's impractical because the thing is actually pressing tones in band. So you're hearing this tweeting. It's actually communicating like a modem over the voice channel. So it's slow, and you don't want to lug this thing around. So no one uses it almost, practically, unless you count the 0.02% of the people. So the issue is, as you move forward, as you've heard in previous people saying, oh, these applications in financial markets have been developed 20 years ago, and we're still trying to support them. Well, same with here in the mobile space. We have TTYs out there. People are trying to use this stuff in emergencies. It's really crazy, but that's an issue. So does it work with video calling? Not really. It's very difficult. But you know what? Most of the people who are deaf, actually their first language is American Sign Language, not English. So reading closed captioning is reading it as a second language. So there are compatibility issues. You can't have conference calls, you can't have video calls when using a TTY. So there are some proposals how to do this in the future called real-time text. I don't have time to get into all the details about TTY, probably more than you would ever want to know, but here's some of the things that you could derive some of the pain points and issues and then design something like, well, let's have an internal keyboard and have that as part of an application in your smartphone, et cetera, to work. So that's kind of design decisions and design points that you come away with from those pain points. You also get pain points by just looking at certain things. Now, of course, excuse me, everything is in black and white, but as you know, as designers, we're all designers, the best thing is to start designing in what? Black and white, right? Don't do it in color, do black and white first. So here's something here. You know, what's the problem here? Anything? Contrast, it's hard to read. There's, you know, things covering, it's occluding some of these icons on the bottom, so you can't see them very easily. Yeah, we don't know what they're trying to say. Look at the home screen. Press on the home key. Where is the home key? And the last sentence cut off. Those are typical things. And if you were watching it on YouTube and it wasn't transcribed by a human, it's likely to be done automatically by some machine program, and it doesn't look pretty, right? Most of the times it's not quite right. So a lot of those issues are quality issues. How do we make those closed captions to be better? And it's usually effort, a lot of effort, time to do this right. Okay, another example of a pain point. If you're blind, how do you turn on the screen reader? And it's actually a problem for the people who don't know how to do that and accidentally turn on the screen reader, believe it or not. That can and does happen. And then people say, oh my God, how do I turn this thing off? And so you end up having to figure out, oh, I've got to give them instructions and what to do. And worse yet, what if that screen reader doesn't speak all these different versions of English? Well, if it doesn't speak a particular language, guess what? It doesn't know what to say, so it doesn't say anything. So you imagine if you're a blind person trying to use this interface and the text-to-speech program has no idea what to say. It's a real problem. So yeah, this is great, but there are definitely limitations that you can run into. So what are the consequences of some of this stuff? Well, another thing that's very interesting to note about the technology, and you have to also know the instances of these technologies, and when we ran these studies, you know, what we don't understand is that just because you have a screen reader, you think you've solved the problem, you have not even begun to solve that problem. Because just like me, unlike me, it just keeps reading. It's this one-way dialogue and keeps reading and reading. And you say, will you shut up? Will you stop? You know, and you can't figure out how to stop that damn thing. It's like, can you buzz it?
Pause it.
Pause it. Well, yeah, but how? No, yeah, that's exactly. Don't know how to do that. And so the thing keeps, you know, talking and talking, just rambles on. And it's reading this screen, and you're like, I want to stop this thing. I want to go somewhere else. I want to navigate somewhere else. So sometimes, and then you find out it can't. It doesn't, or it goes back to the very beginning again. So there are those kind of issues, and those are the pain points. And you say, okay, how do I design those? And you say the requirement is it has to be able to pause and then resume from the point where it started. But you know what? It ends up being a very, very difficult technical problem, especially if you're trying to bolt this stuff on and it's not part of the operating system. So the architecture is really difficult. But in any case, just an example of some of the issues you would run into as a designer for universal design. What's wrong with this picture? What do you think's wrong? Okay, just look, this one on the left. Does anyone know what button 0 would do?
First of all, I can't see, right? So I can't see tap to show settings,
Yeah,
right?
you can't. But it says it, doesn't it? But I'm supposed to know that. Oh, and guess what? You got to take a picture. Now, when I proposed this to some developers once, and they looked at me like I was crazy. Why are you asking us to label all these buttons on a camera for blind people, for God's sakes? Why would they want to use a camera? Are you crazy? Actually, no. Believe it or not, there's a lot of applications. Barcode readers, scanners. Guess what they use? The camera. So it helps them see. Or they don't realize that, maybe the person wants to figure out what the heck this is, and they take a picture and they send it to someone and say, could you please tell me what this is or what I'm looking at? And guess what? There are apps that do this. It's crowdsourced, and people actually type in and say what it is. So yes, they do use the camera. In fact, my first interaction with a blind person about a camera was, I never met this person before, but I knew he was blind, and I was supposed to meet up with him in this building. And I was flabbergasted. There was a poster of him. I said, well, now I know what he looks like. So when I met him, I said, Jeff, it's a pleasure meeting you. He's like, who are you? It's like, I saw your poster. He says, there's a poster? Yeah, there's a picture of you. That's why I know who you are. He said, oh gosh, I have to take a picture. A selfie, no less, right? I gotta take a picture and send it to my mother. Why would a blind person ever use camera? Why bother labeling these buttons, right? See, this is the problem when you don't design for everyone. And you think and assume certain things when you're way off, way, way off. And this is another good one. This is actual implementation ones. You say, what's wrong with this? Anyone? Does anyone know what would happen when the screen reader reads this? It reads out the number, the numeric number, not the phone number as it says right there. It's your new phone number. And then it says it's now active. Your phone number is 9,800,555,000. Yes, that's a great phone number. All right. So remember, screen reader doesn't solve your problem. It's a technology. It's definitely not a mind reader for sure. And no less, if you don't format it in the system correctly, it doesn't know what the heck it is. There's no data format for it. There's nothing. So I don't know. It must be a numeric number. What the heck? It doesn't understand what it's reading. So these are the challenges. This is when people think technology will solve everything. So here's basically what I just said about this, and I'll offer you some other things. And you think, well, that's a touch screen, come on. Give them the little, those physical flip phones. Those are easier, right? No, not at all. Because believe it or not, half of those phones won't tell you what was deleted, or some of the buttons are so small and tiny you can't even tell the difference of one button to another. So I was asking a poll, a very unscientific poll, and I said, what are you as a blind person have in terms of misconception? And they said we can't use touch screens and we can't use smartphones. And that's absolutely not the case, but of course probably is the case because of how poorly we designed or implemented these phones. So then people start saying, hey, why why don't we just take their voice input? You know, you don't have to type things in like this over here. So let's record something and say something. Okay, this is what happens. You press the button, okay, it's pressed. What can I do for you? I need help. Please try again. And it just goes around and around. You know what? Because the system is actually saying, please try again. It's reading the screen, right? But then the system doesn't know it's saying, please try again. And then the speech recognizer doesn't know what the screen reader's doing, and it's thinking the person's saying, please try again.
And also, IVR technology is not that great anyway. I mean, any of us who've ever called a call center and tried to speak, they don't recognize what you're saying half the time anyway. So
Okay.
you have the additional problem of the the voice recognition technology as well.
Right. So if you can't hear, you basically said that if you ever call into a call center and an interactive voice response system or IVR, they often have speech recognition, and there's usually poor speech recognition, and someone's pressing away instead of saying things because it's not doing very well.
It's going to be magnified here.
It's going to be magnified here, but this is the hilarity of it, is because the system is not integrated. So you have two different applications operating, and they don't know. The left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. So one is reading, and the other one is listening. But it's truly not conversational. And then the most offensive thing is, if you are texting and you try to explain to someone why you can't call them over the phone and talk to them, you say, I'm deaf. And that's what happens on the other side. Dial 666 or something. I mean, that's really bad. That's what happens. Security. Not only is security very hard because you can't remember the passwords, it's very hard if you don't even know what you typed in. And why is that? What's wrong with this picture? Remember, it's a literal reader. You typed in the password, right? What's on the screen? A dot. So you type in your password, and all you're hearing is dot, 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 dot. Real helpful. You're going to get that password correct the first time. Guaranteed. So you'll get locked out. And the worst thing is that sometimes it doesn't even say you want to show the password so the darn screen reader can read it to you. There's actually part of the setup wizard. They want you to enter the password, and you can't get it to show the password to enter. It's amazing. That's what happens in universal design. Okay, what's the pain point here? Simple action of unlocking your phone. You just have to swipe, right? Swipe to the outer circle. That might as well be outer space. But where is that circle? So you have those kind of issues. So instructions are very important. And in fact, if you have Explore by Touch, it's actually, when you swipe, you're swiping with two fingers when you have the screen reader on. Because if you have one, you're exploring all the UI objects on the screen to tell you what it is, and then you double tap to launch it. So in order to swipe, you have to use two fingers. And sometimes they tell you explicitly to swipe with one finger, which is absolutely not going to work for some people. So in summary, these are the challenges. And these are the issues for the future. We need to look back in the past and the present about all the challenges, all the issues, the customer pain points, the insights, in order to have a universal design in place. And it's avoiding all those backward compatibility problems like TTY, all the way down to the simple, tiny little details as labeling every single little UI object. Whether you believe that that person's ever going to use it or not, you're likely to be wrong, unfortunately. And then, in terms of future directions, we already see a lot of that. The personal agents, assistants, Cortana, Siri. But when you ask someone who is blind or something, do you use that? And then you're like, no, absolutely not. And you say, oh, wow, because we're just not there, okay? It's like I'd rather dictate a text message than to ask Siri to send a text message. It's too hard. There's too many steps, blah, 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 blah. It's too slow. Because if you've ever heard a screen reader for a very practiced blind person, they play it very quickly. It's not that they have extrasensory perception. It's just that if you listen to text-to-speech all the time, you'd be that good too. So in essence, we have probably going that direction. It's just a matter of really executing it really well and have it well integrated. And it's going to need all these other things about context UI, being aware of where you are, what you're doing, and how you're doing it. So, oh, we know you need closed captioning. Oh, we know that you're driving, et cetera, so that all users will benefit from the universal design. Thank you very much.